Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, we've got an energetic audience here today. Welcome to the hearing. Our first few bills will give us greater insight into the health conditions of inmates in city jails and make the services provided in city jails more transparent. Intro 899A requires Department of Correction to report annually on the use of its nursery and to notify all female inmates that they may be eligible to be housed in the nursery with their child. The sponsor is Councilmember Vanessa Gibson. Intro 1014A requires Department of Correction to report annually on the number of inmates who've received mental health services who are discharged and their rate of recidivism. Sponsor is Councilmember Corey Johnson. Intro 1064A requires Department of Correction to evaluate all programs offered to inmates for purposes such as counseling, vocational training, and drug dependency support. It also requires Department of Correction to publish an annual report on this evaluation. The sponsor is Councilmember Elizabeth Crowley. Intro 1144A requires Department of Correction to train certain staff in quote-unquote trauma-informed care, a federally recognized approach to identifying and responding to symptoms of trauma. It also requires Department of Correction to report annually on the use of this care. The sponsor is Councilmember Lori Cumbo. Intro 1183A requires the NYPD to create a report whenever a person under arrest is treated at a hospital and to send this report to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene if the person is taken into Department of Correction custody. It also requires DOHMH to screen every arrestee held at the central booking area of a local criminal court for medical and mental health conditions before their arraignment. The sponsor is Councilmember Andrew Cohen. We have a deep concern for the health and safety of all New Yorkers, no matter who they are, and these bills will help us ensure that our jails take appropriate care of the men and women inside them. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, our DOC Commissioner Joe Pont, Councilmember Elizabeth Crowley, and now I want to introduce to you the President and CEO of New York City Health and Hospitals, now running all the health care in our correction system, Dr. Ram Raju.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council members. Let me first thank the Mayor for his strong support of New York City Health and Hospitals, and thank Speaker and the Council members for their efforts on these bills. When we took on the critical task of managing the city's correctional health services, we did it with a very clear resolve to bring equity and improve quality of care to thousands of men and women who move through our system each and every year. These bills reinforce the shared commitment of our city's leaders to achieve these goals, and we applaud the efforts to increase transparency and promote health of the vulnerable population. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Raju. And now I'll introduce the sponsor of Intro 899A and the Chair of the Public Safety Committee of the Council, Councilmember Vanessa Gibson.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It is a great pleasure to be here. It's good to see our commissioner. Thank you, Dr. Raju, and to all of my colleagues. It's a great honor. Today is a great day. Despite all of the investments and attention that we have given Rikers Island, specifically around correctional health and women's health in particular, health is such an invaluable asset that can really make or break a detainee's ability to thrive upon being released from prison. We can and we must and we are doing better. Women who give birth while they're incarcerated or who have recently given birth preceding their incarceration have a very unique set of needs. Rikers Island is among a handful of prisons that offer a nursery program, allowing those mothers to live with their infant children up to 12 months. For that, I am very grateful. Nationally, nursery programs have been proven to decrease recidivism and long-term drug use among the mothers who are admitted. The nursery provides these women with physical and psychological services, education, and nutritional classes that they may not otherwise have had access to, as well as educational, recreational, and health services for their newborn children. Last November, the Department of Corrections testified that, sadly, only 4 women had applied and denied access in the past 5 years. Thanks to a tremendous amount of work from the department, the administration, and advocates, the City Council received updated information confirming that they, in fact, accepted only half of the women who applied. This is a program that's proven to help women and preserve their infants' early childhood development. It is simply not acceptable that we are not doing more to help many of our mothers. Today, our city is taking the bold step and a very unique opportunity to fundamentally change the Rikers Island Nursery Program by establishing clear procedures around admittance and record keeping. This legislation, Intro 899A, will improve the nursery program, restore basic rights to incarcerated mothers and their infant children. This law will further stipulate that the Department of Corrections consults with an early childhood development expert in those cases where it may not be in the child's best interest to be in the nursery program. Finally, this new legislation will mandate that female detainees are notified of the nursery program upon entry to Rikers Island and further requires information on the nursery to be clearly posted in our clinics. These are common sense measures to mitigate the lasting social, emotional, and physical health impacts of needlessly separating infants from their mothers and require the department to improve basic record keeping on the applications and outcomes of women who apply to this program. I am so thrilled to have the support of our Speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, my fellow co-sponsors, our Chair of Fire and Criminal Justice Committee, Councilmember Elizabeth Crowley, Women's Issues Co-Chair, as well as Co-Chair of the Women's Caucus, Councilmember Lori Cumbo. I also want to recognize the Legal Aid Society's Prisoners' Rights Project and the Women's Prison Association, who do a tremendous amount of work. I also want to recognize the staff who worked so hard on this legislation for many months: Laura Popa, Rachel Cordero, Rob Calandra, and especially Dana Wax in my office and Brian Crow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to our Speaker for really supporting this legislation and our ongoing and continuous efforts to make our justice system more fair and equitable for everyone. So thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much. And now the chair of the Committee on Mental Health, and I gotta get the bill number, and the sponsor of 1183A, correct? That's me. All right, Councilmember Andrew Cohen.
Thank you. The goal of Intro 1183 is to ensure that all individuals entering the criminal justice system are treated in a humane manner and that there is a continuity of care between all entities responsible for their well-being. The legislation ensures that every arrestee prior to arraignment will be screened for any medical or mental health conditions. This screening record, in addition to any hospital records or other health care evaluations done while in the custody of the police department pre-arraignment, shall be shared with the Department of Corrections. In doing so, we are closing treatment gaps in the system and creating a new contact point at which an issue can be identified and intervention can be provided as early as possible. I want to thank the Speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, for her support. I want to thank Brian Crow and bill drafting, and my own legislative director, Kate Theobald, for her commitment to this bill. I'll thank the mayor for signing it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks all around. All right. Thank you. Finally, the sponsor of Intro 1144A, Councilmember Lori Cumbo.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. A protocol has been established at this time. At 16 years old, Khalif Browder was charged as an adult and held at Rikers Island for 3 years without trial, wrongfully accused of stealing a backpack. He was starved, beaten, and abused by the guards and inmates and spent 400 days in solitary confinement before his charges were finally dismissed. Think about that, everyone, spending 400 days in solitary confinement. On June 6, 2015, Khalif committed suicide. He was 22 years old. And as we know now, last week on Friday, October 15th, 2016, Khalif's mother, Vanita Browder, died of complications due to a heart attack. In other words, she died of a broken heart. It's cases like this that make Intro 1144A such an important piece of legislation, along with all of the other bills that my colleagues have put forward. This bill requires the DOC to utilize trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care is a method of treating victims of trauma that has been developed in part by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. These methods involve recognizing the symptoms of trauma and using specific trauma interventions that may de-escalate volatile situations and help stabilize those that have been incarcerated. Many incarcerated women and men have experienced some sort of trauma, often ongoing during their lives, including sexual violence, rape, assault, childhood sexual abuse, and/or have witnessed violence done to others. In order for people to become productive members of society once they are released, it is vital that they are provided effective mental health resources while they are incarcerated. Studies have shown that trauma-informed care resulted in a 62% reduction in staff assaults and a 54% reduction in inmate assaults. The tools are there. There is evidence that trauma-informed care leads to less suicide attempts, disciplinary actions, and prison violence. Had trauma-informed care been utilized during Kalief Browder's imprisonment, there likely would have been a reduction in inmate violence and therefore a reduction in prison guard aggression. He would not have been subject to the level of abuse and confrontation that he experienced. Had Kalief Browder received informed care, he would have received mental health resources. Had Kalief Browder received trauma-informed care, he and his mother may still be with us today. It's clear that there are many flaws within our criminal justice system and that the treatment of those that are incarcerated is often unjust and inhumane, leaving lasting scars on them and their families. I look forward to Mayor de Blasio signing this bill into law today and taking a step in the right direction towards changing the correctional approach to rehabilitate inmates so that they may lead healthy, rejuvenated, and contributing lives to society in a meaningful way. I would like to thank Councilmember Liz Crowley for your leadership, and Brian Crow, Senior Legislative Counsel, for your patience with this bill, Monica Abed and Kira Wright on my staff, and I look forward to a day when we do not hold those in our prison systems for nonviolent crimes in our prisons simply because they can't afford to post bail. Too many of our young people are languishing and waiting for the speedy justice that is their constitutional right, and I'm proud to pass this package of legislation with my colleagues today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now sign the legislation.
Excuse me?
Staying with it. I'm staying with it. Consistent. All right, all of these bills are now law. The Chamber of Commerce is here, I see. I'm never going to let you down. Yes, the fire never goes out. I would never allege otherwise. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Next, we have two bills that will make our city cleaner and more sustainable. Intro 642A requires heating oil sold and or used in New York City to contain higher levels of biodiesel, making it cleaner for our environment. The sponsors, Councilmember Costa Constantinides. Burning heating oil makes one of the biggest contributions to our city's carbon footprint, and we know that air pollution leads to serious health consequences, often taking a toll on our poorest and most vulnerable New Yorkers. We cannot afford to accept the way things are. We must continue to move toward renewable fuels and away from fossil fuels. We've already prohibited in New York City the use of the dirtiest heating oil, and we have set very clearly and adamantly our goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050 and have the cleanest air of any large American city by 2030. Now, by requiring that we use heating oil with more biodiesel, this bill will help us to achieve those goals and to combat the effects of climate change. Second, Intro 1277A aligns the City of New York's Energy Conservation Code with the State of New York's. It sponsors Councilmember Jumaane Williams. New York state law requires municipalities to enforce the state energy code unless the municipality adopts its own energy code that is overall stricter. We recently passed a law that brought our city's code into line with the state's and added provisions that made ours even more stringent than the state's. Now, there's been additional action from the state. The state has adopted new changes to its energy code. We must update our energy code again. This bill updates our local energy code to match the newest state standards. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Buildings Commissioner Rick Chandler, our Acting DEP Commissioner Vincent Sapienza, our Senior Director of Climate Policy and Programs and Chief Resiliency Officer Dan Zerilli, and now I want to introduce our DCAS Commissioner, Lizette Camillo.
Don't need that.
You have a choice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd first like to thank the Speaker, Councilmember Constantinides, and the rest of the City Council for their leadership on this important issue. The city's 80 by 50 planning demonstrates that the greatest contribution to the city's carbon footprint is relating to heating oil, and in order to achieve this goal, the city will eventually need to transition its away from fossil fuels. The city has made significant progress in reducing emissions from this sector, and this bill is a natural extension to these efforts. DCAS purchases fuel for city operations and was an early leader in biodiesel implementation. City agencies began using biodiesel in their vehicle fleets in 2005, and today all city trucks, including emergency services vehicles, use biodiesel in blends of B5, B10, and B20. New York City government operations have led on bioheat implementation, and since fiscal 13, city buildings have used over 135 million gallons of bioheat and are already using 5% blends for all buildings and facilities. Transforming our use of liquid fuels is a critical part to our sustainable energy, along with energy efficiency and increased use of solar and other renewable sources. DCAS looks forward to implementing this law in government buildings ahead of schedule and leading by example, and appreciates the support of the administration, our sister agencies, and our fuel suppliers. I'd also like to thank our Deputy Commissioner for Fleet, Keith Kerman, and our new Deputy Commissioner for Energy Management, Anthony Fiore, for all of their work on this bill.
Now I'll introduce the Chair of the Environmental Protection Committee and sponsor of 642A, Councilmember Costa Constantinides.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your continued bold and strong leadership on the environment. Thank you. I'm here today to speak on Intro 642, a bill to raise the biofuel standard in New York City, home heating oil. Heating oils are a major source of air pollutants in New York City, responsible for approximately 12% of the local emissions of particulate matter, more than vehicle traffic or power plants. Petroleum diesel exhaust is a major source of air pollution and exposure, and that exhaust has adverse health effects that are including increased mortality rates, respiratory diseases, changes in lung function, and asthma attacks. Using biodiesel in a diesel engine, however, reduces emissions of particulate matter, sulfates, and carbon monoxide. With this bill, we will increase our biodiesel use from the current standard of 2% to a 5% blend by October of next year, 2017. We'll then raise that blend incrementally up to 20% by the year 2034. Expanding the use of biofuel in our home heating oil will reduce pollution, upgrade our air quality, and improve our public health. Biodiesel could emit up to 90% fewer greenhouse gases and up to 10 times less particulate matter. The increase from just 2 to 5%, that will take us to the equivalent of 45,000 cars off the road. Increasing to 20% blend is the equivalent of taking 175,000 cars off the road. And this policy is nothing new. Biofuel and heating oil has been a citywide practice since 2012. And since that time, we've seen, and our administration's commitment to improved air quality, we've seen 780 fewer deaths due to air quality, 1,600 fewer emergency department visits for asthma, and 460 fewer hospitalizations for respiratory and cardiovascular disease annually since Clean Heat has been initiated. Biodiesel is also cost-effective. Its cost has been historically the same or cheaper. Our biofuel comes predominantly from used cooking grease that's recycled from our restaurants across the city and from the waste product from soybean crops, rather than crops grown specifically for that purpose. Restaurants can sell their used cooking oils, grease to grease collectors, and that can turn that into biofuel instead of spending money to dispose of it. Since the original biodiesel bill was passed 4 years ago, a new green industry has sprouted up, and that industry will continue to grow green jobs here in New York City for years to come. One of the main goals of One NYC was to have the cleanest air in the country, and this legislation will go a long way towards getting that done. Of course, I want to thank our mayor for his strong commitment to the environment and 80 by 50, our speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, all of my colleagues, all the environmental organizations that were participating, including the League of Conservation Voters, the Environmental Defense Fund, Empire Clean Cities, United for Action, our partners in labor, and of course here on council staff, Ed Atkin, Laura Popa, Jeff Baker, Samara Swanston, Bill Murray, Jonathan Seltzer, and my own staff, Nick Wazowski and John Benjamin, for all their great efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, for your leadership of the Environmental Protection Committee and for being our partner in so much of this work. And now, another partner in so much of our work is Chair of the Housing and Buildings Committee and sponsor of 1277A, Councilmember Jumaane Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the fact that I had to break out my summer colors on the middle of October should tell us how important all of these bills are. So,
Something's wrong with this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to thank the mayor for, in a few minutes, signing Intro 1277A, which makes various technical edits to the New York City Energy Conservation Code. It was at the mayor's request that we did this. This technical change, when coupled with Intro 1169A, which was signed into law, will exceed the energy efficiency standards set in the state's recently adopted code. For example, going forward, many buildings will need solar-ready roofs, sensors to automatically turn off lights in commercial buildings, increase air leakage testing, and improve insulation for certain air conditioners. These steps we're taking to maximize energy efficiency shows again how much dedication this city has in preserving our environment and conservation in general, and I hope that we continue to be leaders in this for the nation to follow and hopefully the world. So I want to thank the mayor again, the speaker for their leadership on this, and you may, could I say, I may have pronounced that wrong, I apologize. I just say you may. I want to thank her very much, and from the City Council side, Laura Popa, Matt Gawab, Jeff Baker, Ed Atkin, Jen Wilcox, Megan Chen, Guillermo Patino, Jose Conde, and my Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director, Nick Smith.
We've got two individuals for public testimony. Right over there at the microphone will be Scott Hedrick and Daniel Falcone.
My name is Scott Hedrick. I'm with a company called Renewable Energy Group. We're the largest biodiesel producer in North America. I don't want to slow things down, but I came all the way from Iowa this morning just for this. Well, I grew up in upstate, so I get to see my folks too. So, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, Costa, your staff. This has been a terrific bill, a long time coming. While we're based in the Midwest, we're, I think, the largest consumer of used cooking oil coming out of the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. I think this is a terrific measure that'll help improve not just the economy for New Yorkers, but the lives and health and well-being as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Chairman, on behalf of Approved Oil and the Soundview Energy Group, we applaud you. We applaud this bill today. Approved Oil, we're not just the BP Amicos or the Exxon Mobils of the world. We're a Brooklyn-born, family-owned business, been serving the greatest city in the world for 80-plus years. Wow. We have over 200 employees, and we service about 40% of the New York City residential and commercial market. I think today I could say we're more than just a stakeholder. We've been blending biodiesel since 2012. 4 years later, we sell 20% blends of biodiesel out of our Bronx and Brooklyn terminals. I think we could say we've always been, we have a sense of stewardship to our buying group and our customer base, trying to explain that biodiesel component that's in the fuel. When you've got that reduction in carbon intensity and the lower greenhouse gas emissions, truth is, we have the cleanest heating oil in the entire country right here in New York City. We have a fuel now that can burn cleaner than natural gas. And I want to just take 2 seconds out and thank Rocco Lassitosa from the New York Oil Heat Association, his leadership, commitment for bioheat, biodiesel, keeping in the forefront of our membership, pushing our industry to a cleaner fuel, and definitely a special shout out to Shelby Neal from the National Biodiesel Bowl, and definitely Scott Hedrick, because they've made themselves available all the time for the city administration, hearings, whatever was necessary for us to move forward. And we can commit that we will continue to help the city as it matures for higher blends in the future, as this bill states. On a personal note, I feel so privileged to be here today. I've known the chairman now, I think, for 8 years. When he first came on to Jim Gennaro's staff, your predecessor and the creator of the original bioheat bill. I believe Jim said he made you an offer you couldn't refuse, if I remember well. And I just want to say I'm glad he did. You have inspired me. I mean that. I've seen your commitment, your drive, your passion, your leadership, and I will say most of all, your sincerity of purpose for the environment and the people in New York. To me, it's been like a MasterCard commercial. And I just want to thank you. That's all I can really say. And thank you, Mayor de Blasio, because I know it's a we thing. It's never an I do. And I just appreciate the time to speak today. Thank you.
Daniel, thank you. Daniel, you just left one thing out. Given the name of your company, you should have ended by saying, I'm Daniel Falcone, and I approve this message. Okay? You had an opportunity there, man. Okay. All right, a little topical humor here. All right. Let me just do a couple words in Spanish before we sign the final legislation. Hoy he firmado 7 leyes locales para conocer mejor las condiciones de salud de los presos y mejorar la transparencia de los servicios en las prisiones. Y mejorar la calidad de los combustibles para calefacción y modernizar nuestro código de conservación de energía. Estas leyes nos ayudan a tener una ciudad más sana y más sostenible. With that, let us sign the legislation. I'll do it in Greek next time.
I'll take a picture. I'll watch it. All around.
I need 6 extra.
These bills are now law.
You have one left, sure. You know, all the way from mine. So, yes, and I've been tied up the last couple of weeks. My